Peoples of the world, welcome. Capital G bringing you today a deep dive into all of the battle cards that were spoiled out of the March of the Machine set, from an EDH perspective, of course. If you enjoyed this or all the other videos, including our deck techs, be sure to like and subscribe. And we've also got a bunch of Discord links in the description below if you want to come play some EDH over the spell tables. And hopefully we'll get to see some of these cards in action soon. The battles, the new card type introduced to the game thanks to the set March of the Machines. We're looking at this from the commander standpoint. I'm going to be ranking them from meh, which I don't think we'll see too much play, to okay, to yeah, to awesome. That's what we're doing. So meh, okay, yeah, and awesome is how we're going to rank them. They're in no particular order, just whatever order I ended up downloading the images in. And yeah, so let's talk about how they actually work and some of the tactical things we can do first. Speaking of things that are tactical, go get a drink. This is going to be a long one. Hashtag not sponsored by Crush. But make sure you have a drink handy, and it's going to be a long one. So let's, again, go into the mechanics of battle. So a battle card, and all of the battle cards in this set have the Siege subtype, will have a mana cost. It'll have a sort of a hit point value, and they all have an enter the battlefield effect. So these are permanents. They'll come onto the battlefield. You do the thing. You choose an opponent to defend the card. From that point forward, you can damage this card either through combat or through direct damage, such as Lightning Bolt. And once the last counter, because the number in the bottom corner indicates how many hit points or counters that they start with, once the last one is removed, the card is exiled, and then the flip side of the card is cast. The reason they're cast is because sometimes it's a sorcery, sometimes it's a permanent. So yes, that's kind of the logic behind that. So interestingly enough, you get a reward for, instead of attacking your opponents, you attack a card that you've played. Very interesting dynamic. Any of your other opponents can attack that siege, except for the one who is defending it. So, 4-player game. I'm player 1. I give the siege to player 3. Player 2 could attack it if they so chose. There's no benefit to them, at least with this first batch of battle cards. However, there might be some tactical reasons for it. Like maybe they want to flip it over and then wipe the board, so whatever creature is underneath, if it's a creature, gets swept away. That could be a reason. There could be a political deal made, like, hey, help me flip this thing, and I'll take this other guy down. So there's all sorts of reasons why you can attack a battle that is not yours. Generally speaking, ill-advised. But if the game state is as such that you should attack it, then do so. Remember that if a card is like, say Bramble Crush, destroy target non-creature permanent, can target a battle, and if a battle card is destroyed that way, it goes to the graveyard. It does not get the opportunity to flip. That only happens if the battle is quote-unquote defeated, and that's by having the last hit point removed through combat or direct damage. We've got 36 of them, I believe, so like I said, it's going to be a long one. We're going to start with the Invasion of Ravnica. That's the one I've had on screen here, the only colorless battle. And this is fantastic just because it's a colorless card. It can go into colorless decks. So for 5 mana, when this enters the battlefield, the Invasion of Ravnica exiles target non-land permanent opponent controls that it isn't exactly 2 colors. So if you're running a colorless deck, I should stop saying desk. I like my desk, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about my dog. And we are talking about the Invasion of Ravnica being able to exile most other permanents. So that's fantastic. 5 mana is a pretty good rate in a purely colorless deck. Although the card itself, when you've managed to flip it, rewards you for playing colored cards. This can potentially flip into the Guilt-Pact Paragon, a 5/5 construct artifact creature that says whenever you cast a spell that's exactly 2 colors. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, reveal a card that's exactly 2 colors from among them, and put them onto your hand. So, even in a colorless deck, You attack this, you flip it over, you've got a 5/5. That's still pretty sweet, even if you can't take advantage of the trigger from that point forwards. But if you are playing a deck that has multicolored cards, and especially those that have 2 colored cards, it gives you all sorts of extra card advantage. So I am giving this one a yeah. 5 mana for the initial removal is perhaps expensive, but the value you get afterwards, regardless of how many colors are in your deck, is pretty decent. So I'm going to give this one a yeah. We're going to go on to the Invasion of Segovia. This is funny that Phyrexian, that's not a giant Phyrexian, it's just that the rest of the plane is really, really tiny. 3 mana to cast, 4 battle points. And when Invasion of Segovia enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample. So 2 1/1s with trample. 1/1s with trample are no joke. They can be boosted, they can become monstrous things. So they're no joke. 3 mana, you get 2 1/1s. Pretty standard rate. Some spells you do it for 2, some you do it for 3. So that's totally fine as is. That's a pretty good ETB to start with. This can eventually flit into Catus, Sea Tyrant of Segovia. It is a 3/3 and it's tripping that Phyrexian. It's going to get buried under all sorts of Tyrant serpents, it looks like. Non-creature spells you cast have Convoke. So that's fantastic. All of a sudden, all your instants and sorceries can be potentially cast for 0 mana, depending on how many creatures you have on the board. And at the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. That is an amazing untap trigger. This is getting an awesome. This is a fantastic card. It is pretty easy to flip. And having what is basically a Seedborn Muse light on the cheap, I think it's worth giving up an attack step to get this flipped over. That is just fantastic. And also being able to cast your non-creature spells for free. In fact, it's tap 2 blue creatures to cast Counterspell if somebody tries to remove it. So, there you go. I really like this one. This is definitely an awesome card. Invasion of Fiora. 6 mana for this siege, black, and 4. When it enters the battlefield, you can either destroy all legendary creatures or destroy all non-legendary creatures. Legends Matter is definitely a theme, so a one-sided board wipe for those decks, absolutely fantastic. Of course, if your opponents have their commanders out and they need to go, you can always choose the other mode as well. So a good flexible board wipe. 6 mana is a little expensive for a board wipe, but that flexibility and that control that you have over it is pretty good. But what it flips into, Marchesa. Long may she reign, especially if she basically stood up to the Phyrexians, was like, nope, my throne. 3/6 with Death Touch and Menace, and whenever she attacks, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent. That is amazing, by the way. Because it removes the counters from a permanent, it means that she can actually win other battles by simply removing the counters from another battle. She can also take down a Planeswalker just by turning sideways. Doesn't even have to attack the Planeswalker, just remove all the counters from a permanent. Fantastic stuff there. Or she can even remove age counters from your Mystic Remora. So that is an amazing attack trigger. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So sort of a play on the Monarch mechanic in that upkeep trigger. Like I said, I guess the 6 mana value is not because of the ETB, but because of what happens when you manage to flip her. And again, only 4 points of damage needed to flip her. Absolutely amazing. This one's getting an awesome. That mana value may seem restrictive, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. Invasion of Karsus. That is a double red and 2. 4 damage points. And when this enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. So, mini board wipe for 4 mana. The going rate for a 3 damage spell is usually 3 mana, so 4, but you've got a battle on the battlefield. Sure, that's pretty decent. It sticks around and you get the potential to flip it. When you do flip it, it becomes a refraction elemental. Has ward, so whoever wants to target with it has to pay 2 life. In our format, a pretty small price to pay typically. But whenever you cast a spell, this deals 2 damage to each opponent. Any spell, doesn't matter what it is. It's not like Oh, it has to be an instant, or it has to be a sorcery, or it has to be a battle. Nope. Play your creature, deal 2 to the board. Play Planeswalker, deal 2 to the board. Play an instant, 2 to the board. Fantastic stuff here. Pretty good raid, very aggressive card. I want to give it somewhere between a yeah and an awesome. I'm going to go with a yeah on this one. Like, I definitely would love to see this in action. Just not against me. I want to be the one who has this thing. Just pinging my opponents down. Invasion of Kaldheim. For 4 mana, 4 hit points on this particular siege. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play the exiled cards. So, fantastic stuff. It's basically a sort of a slow wheel of sorts just for you. You've got 5 cards in hand, you pay your 4 mana, you draw 5 new cards, and you still have access to the old ones for a full rotation of the table. So, that already is pretty amazing. So that's getting an awesome jest for that front side. Power of the World Tree is the back side. Discard a land card, deal 2 damage to any target. It is an enchantment that we're getting it instead of a creature this time. Also, whenever you discard a land card, exile the top card of your library, you may play that card this turn. Like I said, both sides on this card are awesome. So yeah, there's no contesting it. This is a quality card. I love this one. Invasion of Ikoria. So double green X. It's got 6 battle points. I haven't really settled on a name yet. I'm going to go with battle points because I forget what they're actually supposed to be called. So I'm going to call them battle points. When Invasion of Ikoria enters the battlefield, search your library or graveyard for a non-human creature card. With mana value X or less, put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So bring something back from the yard or bring it from your library directly onto the battlefield for double green X. Absolutely, that's a great rate. And 6 is a lot to be able to flip this over, but when you do, it flips into Zeathora, Apex of Ikoria. It is an 8/8 with reach, and for each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. Very, very scary thing. The only thing I don't like about Zeathora is the fact that, typically speaking, the invasion is flipped in time for your second main phase. So you need an extra attack step, or maybe throw some direct damage at it. Maybe bolt at the end of somebody's turn to finish it off, and then just take someone by surprise and go nuts. The front side is awesome though. Like that is a game-winning effect on the front side as is. So I don't see this flipping to the backside so often, except at lower power tables. So I'm gonna say awesome again, just because that front side can win a game. But if for some reason someone manages to respond and break up the game-winning combo, well, now they've got a target on their back, and once that battle is flipped, well, there's nothing their blocking creatures can do about it, is there? Invasion of Ixalan. 2 mana, 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Never really been a huge fan of that effect, where it's like, look at your top 5, keep a specific thing. In this case, because all the battles are permanent cards and they give you a sorcery-like effect, it's a bit better than it would have been even 6 months ago. So honestly, I think that's okay on the front side. On the back side, it's just a 4/3 of trample, a belligerent Regisaur. Whenever you cast a spell, this becomes indestructible until end of turn, so an indestructible trampling creature. I'm going to give it a yeah. I think it's playable. It's not my favorite. I'm not really going to pursue this one too often, I don't think, but I can see why people would want to play it. And it's not a terrible card by any means. It's just not something I would say is essential. Invasion of Khalim. 4 mana. 4 mana, that's white, red, and 2. This is our first 2-colored invasion. When this enters the battlefield, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+0 and gain vigilance and haste until end of turn. Pretty sweet. Has 5 battle points. So it's just a nice little precursor to an attack. It's a bit of a telegraph though. If you're playing this, it means everyone knows that you're going to attack and everyone is going to get their defenses ready. If you manage to flip this thing, though, it becomes Valor Reach's Tag Team. You create two 3/2 red and white warrior creature tokens, and whatever this creature deals at least one other creature, whatever this and at least one other creature token attack, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So this is meant to encourage a token attack strategy. I'm giving it a meh for our format. I don't think it's a bad, bad or awful or unplayable, but it's not something that interests me at all. But if you've got a spot for it, let me know what it is. Remember, if I'm wrong about one of my evaluations, say so in the comments. Let me know which one you think is better than I'm thinking. Is this better than I think? You tell me. Invasion of Lorwyn. Green, black, 4. 5 battle points on this siege. And when this enters the battlefield, destroy a non-elf creature an opponent controls for power X or less. X is the number of lands you control. So 6 mana kill spell. Yeah, that's pretty expensive. 5 battle points. What do we get? What do we flip it into? We're flipping it into Winnowing Forces. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So for 6 mana and then giving up an attack step, you're getting a big ol' elf. A big elf. Meh. I think this card's fun. I really do. But it's a high cost to cast for a kill spell, and then it's a high attack value to get this flipped over. I think it's a meh. I think it's a little overpriced for what you're getting. It's good, but it's overpriced for what you're getting, especially since it cannot take down another elf. And Lathiel is still one of the more popular commanders. Now, elves can produce mana like it's nobody's business. So maybe 6 mana isn't too expensive. I don't know. I think it is for what you're getting. Invasion of Kaladesh, a red and a blue, just a 2 mana for this battle. It'll only have 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, create a Thopter, 1/1 colorless Thopter with flying. Yeah, that's a pretty good rate for a 1/1 flyer. 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer. But once this flips, it becomes Aetherwing, a golden scale flagship. It becomes a vehicle. Star 4 with flying. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control, and it's only 1 to crew. Pretty deuce. I'm going to say yeah. I can see people playing this card. I think, again, 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer is pretty efficient to get the game started. It's not a big effect, but the Aetherwing, especially if you're running red-blue artifacts, is a nice beater in the air. Invasion of Asgol. Also officially costed at 1 black and 1 red manas. 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. Yeah, so if somebody decides to, turn 1 cast their commander, and it costs them like half their hand to do it, well, for 2 mana, they're gonna have to pay a higher price to bring him back, force them to sacrifice it. So pretty good effect there. Later in the game, a little bit weaker if someone's got like 3, 4, 5 creatures and they can choose what to sacrifice. You can choose yourself, so if there's something that you want to sacrifice, you can choose yourself with this card. So that's pretty cool, so good flexibility there. When it flips over, 2/1 menace, Ashen Reaper. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on Ashen Reaper if a permanent was put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn. Which is something that Black-Red is really good at. So I'm going to give it a yeah. I think it's a nice playable card. Better in the early game when you can snipe someone's commander after they've spent their Jeweled Lotus on it. Invasion of New Phyrexia. This is one of the big ones. White-Blue X. 6 battle points. This enters the battlefield. Create X 2/2 white and blue night creature tokens with vigilance. Fantastic. Just army in a can. This scales throughout the game. You could even play for 2 mana and just attack at it if you wanted to. But when you do attack it, you do flip it over, it becomes Teferi Akosa of Zalfir. He's found his home. He's freed his people. We feel good for him on this one, actually. And it's one of the more fair Teferi cards. +1, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature. Okay. -2, you get an emblem with 9 you control, get +1/+0, and have Ward 1. considering this might have just put in a bunch of knights onto the battlefield for you, being able to flip them over and then get that emblem, pretty sweet stuff. All of a sudden, if someone doesn't have that board wipe ready to deal with your knight army, it's lights out. -3, tap X creatures you control. When you do, shuffle a non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value X or less into its owner's library. So 3 loyalty is a pretty high cost for that effect, but if we could take our opponent's best thing and throw it right back into their library and they have to dig for it to get it back, good stuff. I think I'm going to go with awesome just because side 1. Army in a can. A big army in a can. 2/2 Vigilance Knights. They're no joke. Especially since there's a big Knight sub-theme in this set. So yeah, I'm going to give it an awesome just for the front side. Even if you never ever flip it, the value you get from that white-blue X is just fantastic. Invasion of Moog. White, green, and 2 Selesnya. 5 battle points, and when this enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Oh, that'll make this super easy to flip, especially if you're going wide. You've got like 5-6 creatures on the board. Slam this down for 4 mana. Make your army bigger. Fantastic stuff there. Bloom Welter Dryads when you manage to flip it over. Has Ward 2, and at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. I don't think the reward is worth the attack. Like 1 +1/+1 counter on a creature? Meh. So that really brings it down. So I'm on the overall going to give it a meh, because I think there's better ways of +1/+1ing your whole team than Invasion of Moog, and the reward is just not there for me. Invasion of Ergamon for a green and a red, and 5 battle points on the siege. When this enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Then you may discard a card if you do draw a card. That's pretty good. Loot for what? You get to loot for 1, and you get a treasure for 2 mana. Pretty good rate for that stuff. Once this flips over, it becomes a 3/4 trample creature, Truga Cliffhanger, or Truga Cliffhanger, I should say. When this enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a land or battle and put it into your hand. So this could actually tutor out battles. So that is an interesting little piece of tech. So I'm going to give it a yeah. As we see more and more battles, this could rise in the ranks. But that first ETB is actually pretty good. And the second ability, the one that you get from the Cliff Charger, yeah, that could prove relevant. So superficially costed, I'd say yeah. Invasion of Belinon. 3 mana for this particular mono white siege. When this enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. So that's on rate. 3 mana for a 2/2 with vigilance. 5 battle points, that's a lot. It flips into the War Anthem. Creatures you control get +1/+1. So starts off as a 2/2, but if you give up some attacks and knock this thing down to 0, you get a Glorious Anthem. Meh. It's not, like I said, not bad, but in our formats, I think this is better in, like, say, Standard, or if you're playing the Standard Knights deck, I can see this being pretty decent. But in our format, I'm not sold. I'm leaning towards meh. Invasion of Dominaria. 3 mana, 5 battle points again. When this enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life and draw a card. So I guess some life gain decks would like that. Once this is flipped over, you get a Seraph Faithkeeper, which is essentially a Seraph Angel with flying and vigilance. Again, a meh. These mono white battles, not really getting there. The one advantage to this is that white is really good at blinking permanents. And so this is going to be a good thing to blink, as it bumps up your life total, draws you some cards. You never really want to go for the flip. I mean, knocking this down from 5 to 0 just for that angel doesn't, I don't know. I don't think it's worth the reward. The ETB is worth it with specific synergies, but the angel I don't think is worth it. Invasion of Kamigawa, for 4 mana in blue. 1 blue and 3. We get, when this enters the battlefield, tap target artifact or creature the opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. So freeze locks something for a turn. With proliferate, really locks it down. Once you've taken off the 4 counters, this flips into Rooftop Saboteurs. When this deals combat damage to a player or battle, draw a card. It's a 2/3 flyer. I'm leaning towards meh. I think it's a great creature on the back. Just that initial, like, when you play it and get to tap something down. That makes it easy to flip, I guess, because all of a sudden you're taking away a blocker and then forcing that person to defend it. And if they don't defend it, you get a pretty decent flying attacker that lets you draw some cards. But I don't know. I don't see this as being super strong in our format, especially since Rooftop is boltable. Super easy to remove. So I don't know. I don't think this is worth 4 mana. Invasion of Eldraine. For black and 3, 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, target opponent discards 2 cards. Having one opponent discard 2 cards, not really a thing we do in our format. The backside, Prickle Fairies, 2/2 flying at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If that player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, this deals 2 damage to them. Now, if you're leaning into everybody discards their hands and everyone's going to take damage, and you're really going for that, like, discard no cards in hand strategy, and you're just going to, like, not let our opponents play the game, everyone's in top deck mode all the time, that's pretty decent. It's not really my style. I'm feeling a nah. I don't love it. There's really only the one archetype that could consider playing this, but I mean, those archetypes are already playing things like Megrim, which still want our opponents to have some cards in our hand. So, you know, we can discard them and deal damage to them that way. So, I don't know. I'm not feeling that one. Invasion of Ugrotha. A black and 4, 5 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to any other target, and you gain 3 life. This can shoot down another battle card, this can shoot down a flying creature, dome your opponent, whatever. When it flips over, it flips into Grandmother Ravi Senior. Fantastic, the Senior family is back, and, well, they don't like Phyrexians apparently, so here we go. I love the fact that her card is being, like, flown through the air and led by a couple of bats. That is some awesome chariot riding there. 3/3 flying, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, this gets a 1/1 counter, and you gain 1 life. I think this is a really fun card. It's a nah for our format, because 5's a little expensive for just 3 damage to 1 target. And then having to attack it for 5 to get the flip. Not really there. I like the card. Again, I think this is fun, but I don't think it's great in our format by any means. Invasion of Mercadia for 2 mana. When this enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. We already play cards that do this in our format, so automatically this is actually quite good. It's not as good as Thrill of Possibility, for example, because this is only going to be cast at sorcery speed. But that's fine. 4 points to flip this over. It flips over into Kyran Flamewright, a Goblin Spell Shaper, and this is a great throwback to Mercadian Masks. 3 mana, tap, discard a card. Create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. So you get 2 1/1s, and you get to buff your whole team and grant them haste. This is an awesome. This is actually fantastic. 2 mana, this is super easy to flip. And yes, I know it costs you a card from your hand every time you want to use the activated ability. At this stage of the game, it's evolved to the point where that is not really that much of a drawback. You could be playing in black and be able to reanimate the things, for example. You could be playing madness cards. There are so many ways to take advantage of that discard. Or maybe you just don't need your 14 Fland. That could be a thing also. Fantastic card. I like this one a lot. Awesome. Invasion of Muraganda. So, this is a throwback to the enchantment Muraganda petroglyphs from Time Spiral, which says all creatures without abilities get +2/+2. I didn't realize that Muraganda was a plane in its own right, so now we know. Green and 4, 6 points to knock this, to defeat it. That's a lot. 5 mana and 6 points. When this enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature fights up to one target creature you don't control. Okay, a +1/+1 counter and the fight effect. That's a good start, but 5 mana is a lot for that. Let's see what it flips to. Primordial Plasm. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature gets +2/+2 and loses all abilities until end of turn. So, I don't know. I don't actually like this. This is probably the one I like the least on the overall. I can see why. The flavor makes perfect sense to me. But other than that, it's a nah. Unless you're really playing vanilla tribal, this is a nah. Invasion of Zendikar. Green and 3 has 3 battle points. It's a pretty low battle point score. I like that. When this enters the battlefield, search your library for 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So, yet another example of explosive vegetation with upside. What does it flip to? Because 3 is easy to flip. So let's see what we get. We get Awakened Skyclave. It's a 4/4. It's got Vigilance. It's got Haste. And as long as this is on the battlefield, it's a land in addition to its other types. Okay. Tap for a mana of any color. I'm going to give it a yeah. I could see people playing this in our format. It's not terrible by any means. A 4/4 with Vigilance and Haste, and it can tap for mana. That's actually pretty good. It can attack, it can block, it taps for mana. It gets you 2 lands when you put it down. It's easy to flip. Yeah, I can definitely see this playing. It's not a huge impact player by any means, but this is a pretty good card. Invasion of Innistrad. Double black and 2. Has Flash. So this one can be cast at instant speed. When this enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -13/-13 until the end of turn. Because of course it does. 5 battle points. Once those are removed, Deluge of the Dead. When this enters the battlefield, create 2 black zombie creature tokens. Okay, I like that. Yes, you've given up 5 power worth of attack to flip this over. But you get a couple of zombies back right away. Good start. Black and 2, exile target card from a graveyard. That's any graveyard. If it was a creature, create a zombie token. Yeah, this flips over into some graveyard hate that expands your zombie army. This is pretty good. I mean, 4 mana for targeted removal. At least it's at flash speed, but 4 mana for targeted removal is kind of much. So I think that's the only thing that slows it down a little bit. So I'm gonna say a yeah. It's yeah, but on the brink of awesome. Just 1 mana too much, I think. Invasion of Rin, 4 mana. This is Jace's home plane if you're not sure. 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards and discard a card. Pretty standard rate, 4 mana for that kind of effect. Once it flips over into Overloaded Majoring. 1 tap, sacrifice this, copy target spell you control. That is an amazing effect. It can copy anything. You can copy a battle, you can copy a creature spell, copy an instant sorcery, what have you. That is absolutely fantastic. This is getting an awesome. What this flips into, 4 battle points, it could prove to be a little high, but that is one heck of a reward that you're getting for it. And the fact that you're getting to see 3 more cards in your deck as soon as you play it is pretty good. So yes, I'm going to give this one an awesome. Invasion of Amonkhet. Did anybody else know that there was still an Amonkhet to invade? It's a surprise to me, honestly. Black, blue, and 1 for this 4 battle point siege. When it enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards. Then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card. That's actually really good ETB. I like that. That is a very, very good ETB. Once the counters are removed, it flips over to a Lazotep Convert. This enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in your graveyard, except it's a 4/4 zombie in addition to its other types. It doesn't have to, but it can be a creature in your graveyard. You've just milled 3 cards, so you've got creatures at your graveyard that this can be. It's never bigger or smaller than a 4/4, but if it's got some pretty neat abilities, this gets it. That's like a yeah bordering on awesome. It's actually really solid. I'm going to say yes, like a really, really high yeah. Invasion of New Capenna. Black and white, 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. When you do, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls. That is actually a great piece of removal. Yes, it's sorcery speed, but if you're giving up like a random token, for example, or a treasure token to exile somebody's big creature or big splashy thing, that is actually a great rate. So 4 battle points to flip it over. It flips over into an equipment, the Holy Frazzle Cannon. When equipped creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on that creature, and each other creature you control that shares a type with it. So this is great for tribal. It only equips for 1. This is getting an awesome. This is a great card. Great piece of targeted removal. And especially if you're doing tribal tokens of some sort, like soldiers, or you're doing 3-color knights. I think one of the precons, and I'll talk about the precons in another video, is a 3-color knights theme. Perfect in there, because all of a sudden, if you've got like 10 knight tokens, you equip it and you swing with it, everybody gets a counter. Fantastic stuff. I love it. Invasion of Pyrula. That is a blue and a green. When this enters the battlefield, scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land or double-faced card, that includes other battles. We've got transforming Praetors in this set, so lots of things this could hit. So if it's a land or a double-faced card, draw a card. So it's whatever you're revealing is what you're drawing, basically. Good stuff. 2 mana, and it's a scry 3, so even if you don't find any of these things, you're still setting up your next turn very nicely for 2 mana. 4 battle points. Once those are gone, Gargantuan Slaphorn. Trample, Ward 2, 4/4. Other transform permanents you control have Trample and Ward 2. This is definitely meant more for limited. This is meant to push the transform tribal. I think it's a good card. You're getting a 4/4 at a pretty good rate. That's kind of difficult and annoying to deal with. I want to say, do I want to say yeah or nah? I'm leaning towards yeah, because that's that's an easy thing to flip over, and a pretty difficult thing to get rid of once it is flipped over. Invasion of Theros. White and 2, 4 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, search your library for an aura, god, or demi-card. Reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle. So, nice little tutor effect. Very limited to what it can target, but there's relevant targets of all 3 types. Good stuff. And I figure we're going to be going back to Theros sooner than later and seeing the aftermath of that. And that's if Aftermath doesn't give us any more demigods, so that could be a thing. But let's move on. Afara Ever Sheltering. That's the flip side. 4/4 legendary enchantment creature god. This has lifelink and indestructible as long as you control at least 3 other enchantments. So instead of like needing a certain amount of devotion, it just needs a certain number of enchantments in order to make it indestructible. But it's always going to be a creature. Whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. That's really good stuff. So you get to tutor for one of your enchantments, like say All That Glitters. You can go get your aura, throw it onto something, attack, flip this, and you've got an indestructible lifelinking attacker / blocker. And on top of that, it's an enchantress. You play another enchantment, draw more cards. Really, really good stuff. This is an awesome. Getting close. Invasion of Ragatha. Red and 2, 5 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to another target. I can't actually read that card. The resolution kind of got messed up on this one. 4 damage to another target battle or opponent, and 1 damage to each other creature. So yep, so it deals 1 damage to creatures, wipes away some of the small fries, 4 damage to another battle or an opponent. So interesting there, that helps you flip over some of your other battles. Red-green does have a limited defeating battle sub-theme in the draft setting, so that makes sense. On the flip side, once all 5 of these counters are removed, you get a Disciples of the Inferno. A 4/4 with prowess, so it's already pretty big to start, and then all of a sudden, all your non-creature spells, including other battles, make it bigger for the turn. If a non-creature source you control would deal damage to a creature, battle, or opponent, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. That is amazing. All of a sudden, lightning bolt for 5? Yes, please. I think this is going to be fantastic in a lot of red decks. I'm going to say yeah, I don't think it's like super essential. Like 5 to flip this over is a lot, and the initial effect is kind of small. I see this being great in standard or limited. This is going to be great in standard and limited. Commander, I'm going to say yeah, I can see people playing it. Invasion of Xerix. When this enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. It costs a blue and a white and 2, so 4 mana for a bounce. It could be any creature, including a creature you control. Which means if it's a creature that you flipped over from another battle card, you get to recast that battle, so that could be a thing. So some utility with that. 4 battle points once it's flipped over. Vertex Paladin. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. Pretty decent flyer, Angel Knight. Again, 4 is well, a lot better than 5, that's for sure. But 4 mana for that initial cost, and the effect is fairly small. I'm going to say nah. You might see it, but I don't think it's going to be impactful. Invasion of Tarkir. 2 mana, 5 battle points. That's huge. When this enters the battlefield, reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, this deals X plus 2 damage to any other target where X is the number of cards revealed this way. So even if you don't reveal any dragons, you're dealing 2 damage for 2 mana. Okay rate, not great. But once you start revealing a couple of dragon cards from your hand, that can become huge. And this could actually shoot down another battle card entirely. Or take down your opponent's biggest creature, or even take down one of your opponents. 5 battle points to flip this over, but once those counters are gone, we get a Defiant Thundermaw. It's got flying, it's got trample, and whenever a dragon you control attacks any dragon, and each and every one triggers this, deal 2 damage to any target. Miram decks will love this. So, it's an absolute awesome for Miram. I don't think Dragon is as interested. It's pretty good still in Dragon, but I don't think it's as interested. I don't think Tiamat would be as interested. But Miram would love this. So, yeah, I'm going to give it... Well, we're going to see... I think we'll see this card a lot in Miram. Could see it in other decks. So I think that's enough to give it an awesomeness. Just like a low, like just over the yeah, awesome. Invasion of Alara, the only 5-color battle in this set. Does a lot of things on ETB. So here we go. Enters the battlefield. You get to exile cards from the top of your library until you hit 2 non-land cards, mana value 4 or less. You get to cast one for free, put the other in your hand. So 5 mana, 2 cards, 1 that you cast, 1 that you keep. Okay. 7 to flip this over. That's a huge amount. I think it's the largest amount of the set. But when you do flip this over, you get Awaken the Maelstrom. It's a sorcery. It's all colors. Target player draws 2 cards. So chances are you. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield for free. Create a token that's a copy of a permanent you control. Yes, you can copy the artifact you put into your hand. Put down from your hand if you wanted to. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters amongst 1, 2, or 3 creatures you control. So 3 +1/+1 counters total, however you like. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. So, that's, what's it called? The initial casting, the front side. If you're playing Wooburg, I like it. I can see that going into Wooburg decks, especially Jared Carthelian. The flip, like 7 to flip this is a high cost because you're giving up 1, maybe 2 rounds of attacks depending on the board state to get this to flip over. Yes, it does a lot of little things, but that's all they are. It's a lot of little things. So it's like front side is awesome, back side is meh. So we'll average it out and call it a yeah. I see people playing this. I don't see people like in a hurry to flip this, other than for funsies. Invasion of Chandalar. double green 3. When this enters the battlefield, return up to 3 non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So that's a slightly better restock. 5 mana to get 3 things back from your graveyard in green. Yeah, I can see that being a playable card. It's a little slow, depending on the board state and depending on how much you've ramped. That feels a little bit slow, but by that same token, if your opponents have expended resources to take cards out of, like, off of your battlefield or your hand, and you just get them right back with this thing, okay. Only 4 battle points to flip it. That's pretty easy. Becomes a ley line surge. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Yeah, I'm giving this one an awesome. Because you can easily set this up that you pay your 5 mana, you get some cards back. Flip it right away for good attack, especially if you have the right... If you give this to an opponent that cannot really defend this from you. This is so good. That's a very powerful way of cheating mana cost of the stuff that you bring back to your hand. It doesn't even have to be the stuff you bring back from your hand. You could be hiding something even nastier in your hand already. So, Invasion of Chandalar gets the awesome. We like being able to play our things for free. Invasion of Gobakhan. 2 mana. 3 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile an online card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. So, we've seen White start to do this. I think this is the second or third time we've seen this ability. Where White can just pluck something from somebody's hand and... Well, they can still cast it, but they have to pay the tax for it, basically. So, could slow down one of our opponent's things. Only 3 points to flip this. This flips into a Light Shield Array. So this would be... I assume this is Tails' home plane. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Okay. And sacrifice this. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible till end of turn. So this is worth kind of giving up a little bit of your attack step to flip this over. Because then you can use this to defend your board and buff your board. So I'm going to say awesome. It slows down the board wipe if someone's got a board wipe, or slows down somebody's win con a little bit if they've got their win con in hand. But again, once this flips, protects your board all day long and buffs your team for as long as, you know, if people don't have the answer to your board, you've got like 6-7 tokens on the board, you're swinging away, you're making them bigger and bigger. And if they don't answer, it quickly, if they don't answer the Light Shield Array quickly, well, it's going to get out of hand. So I'm going to give this one an awesome. That's a great defensive piece in white. 2 left. Invasion of Tolvada. Black, white, and 3. Has 5 battle points. When this enters the battlefield, return target non-battle permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. 5 mana reanimation spell. A little pricey, but there's no drawback otherwise. The drawback is that it costs 5 mana. You manage to flip this thing over, it becomes an enchantment. The Broken Sky. Creature tokens you control have +1/+0 and have lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. So, get the Anthem effect when you flip this over. This pairs very nicely with all of the Phyrexian Mites that we've been seeing. It pairs very nicely with the incubation tokens, especially after we flip those. Yep, so I think I see some good synergies here. I'm going to call it a yeah. That 5 mana and 5 battle values are a little bit on the high side. I can see why it is, though. It's a good card. I'm going to call it a yeah. I can see people playing with this. Lastly, Invasion of Arcavius. Double blue and 3. 7 battle points. This is a hard one to flip over. When this enters the battlefield, search your library, graveyard, and or outside the game for an instant or sorcery card you own. Reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So we've already got solved the equation. That costs only 3 mana. Invasion of Arcavius costing 5 is a pretty high price. And we can't go for cards outside the game unless we have a Rule 0 for that. Or you're running this, say, in Standard or Pioneer and can go into your sideboard. So, that's really expensive for that tutor effect. It's a good tutor effect, but that's really pricey. This flips over into Invocation of the Founders, an enchantment. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So the payoff is pretty huge here. If you're playing this in Spellslinger, it might be difficult to flip over, honestly. But the payoff, if you do flip this over, copy every spell you instant or sorcery spell you cast for the rest of the game, instant and sorcery specifically. Cast one lightning bolt, you get two, for example. Every time. That is one hell of a payoff. That cost is so high, but that payoff is so sweet. I'm gonna say yeah. Again, the cost is too high. The payoff is sweet, the cost is just too high. Am I wrong about that, by the way? If you think I'm wrong about any of my evaluations, please say so in the comments. And do you like the battles? Are you going to start playing these in some of your decks? I know that I am. Once I pull a few of these, I'm going to be scooping up a few boosters. So, yeah, let me know what you think of battles. I think we're going to see some really interesting things for this mechanic. I see a lot of directions it can go in the future. You don't have to be a game designer to know what this can do. So, I'm definitely excited for the future of this new card type. I'm excited for a lot of the ones that we're getting now, as we've noticed. I've given out a pretty generous amount of awesomes because they're good cards. They're going to be a lot of fun to play. And you might see one or two in the next deck that I present. There's been a lot of awesome legends in March of the Machines. So I think I'm going to be busy for the next little while. So next time you see me, we're going to have a brand new brew coming from this set. Probably going to do 3 or 4 of them. There's a lot of great combinations here. So, lots to look forward to on this channel. Until then, we will see you all again next time. Bye for now.